guys, welcome back to the channel. For those of you that are just joining us, my name's Andy. On today's agenda, we have a case 188 that I pulled from a case 310 dozer. I bought that dozer as a parts machine to rob parts out of the injection pump off of this. I have a 1965 case 530 CK tractor loader backhoe that I needed one part inside the pump that is no longer available. It's got a Stanadyne pump on it, or not Stanadyne, Master. I mean the predecessor to Stanadyne, I guess. But parts are no longer available for the specific part I needed. So I bought the whole machine, drug this thing home for I think $800. It had no undercarriage on it. It had been gutted already, so final drive and still had the final drive and I guess the hydraulic tank, fuel tank, any of that junk. All I really needed was the injection pump off of this. But these are getting harder and harder to find. And when you do find them, they're not cheap. So I decided to salvage this. I don't know whether or not it runs. It does spin, so that's positive. But there's a lot of good parts in this. Even if I weren't going to rebuild this unit and just rob parts off of it, these, what do they call these? It's slipping my mind right now. This style of injector, it's not the pencil style, but what they used before that, and they're unobtainium anymore. So unless you can find a injection shop that can get you seals for them, and you have an injector fail in a case 188, good luck finding it. Doesn't exist. So lots of good parts. It's a good rebuild unit. It may be a runner, I don't know. I don't have a spare injection pump, obviously, to see if it runs. I do want to get this hydraulic pump off. That's what we're doing today. I've had this thing, how they work, they're just front mounted spline to the crankshaft. And over time, especially in dozers it makes sense. Especially in dozers, you'll get mud and crap packed up in there. And I mean, how often did a dozer's undercarriage get sprayed out? So you get stuff packed up in there and you'd end up rusting up that shaft or that coupler between the hydraulic pump and the crankshaft. And these pumps would be next to impossible to get off, especially in the dozers, just because all that dirt and mud build up in there. Not such a big deal in the backhoes. I've had my hydraulic pump off the backhoe and not an issue. This would be next to impossible to do if this motor was still in the dozer. Just how they mount. I mean, the base of this is one of your engine mounts. There's a bolt hole in the bottom of this big piece of cast that holds the pump on. That's one of the engine mounts. So being that it won't simply slide off that spline shaft, the only way at this point to get that hydraulic pump off and actually be able to salvage it, because these are also a very sought after expensive part if you have one of these machines. Only way to do it at this point, I'm going to take this big cast piece off. It'll unbolt from the front of the block. It's just 4 big bolts, 2 on each side. So I'll pull that off. And like I said, I've had this thing soaking for I don't even know how long, months. And I've yet to be able to get this off. But if I can get those bolts off, I'll have another point that I can pry from back here, I can hammer from back here, whatever I got to do, and that'll push the pump up off that shaft. In theory, we're going to hope that works because we're kind of out of options, and if you can't get that off, you can't rebuild the engine anyway. So stay with me. We'll tackle this bullshit together. So like I said, it's been a little bit since I've looked at this thing even, but after taking a second glance at it,
I'm not going to just have to pull these 4 bolts out. I mean, we got that one, the 2 on the other side. I'm going to pull those out. And then looking at this coupler, you can kind of see the spline shaft from the pump comes in here to this coupler. Well, this coupler just bolts with 4 bolts to the front of the crank. So I'll unbolt those 4 bolts, and then in theory, I should be able to pull the whole thing off. At that point, the whole thing should drop off. And at that point, I can take the whole thing over to the press, put it up in the press, get a clamshell on the front side of this, and push against that spline shaft to the hydraulic pump to separate the coupler from the hydraulic pump. So that's what we're gonna go with at the moment. We're gonna try that and see what happens. So went ahead, I pulled, I guess the 2 lower ones were a bolt. These top 2 ones are a stud. Went ahead and pulled those out. So at this point, or in theory, I should be able to take the 4 out of that coupler, slide the whole thing off, in theory. So we'll see how that works. I did want to show you. So on my backhoe, I have a piece of shit Chinesium temp gauge that I got off the jungle site. Well, this machine actually had the original case temp gauge still in it. And look how freaking cool this thing is. Like this, if I can get this where it's tapped in the block and get that fitting out without rounding it off, and I can put this on my machine, this is a cool gauge. Even if I didn't put it on my hoe, I almost want to save it for something else. It's that cool. So it'll be another day. Right now I really need to get this pump off of here, because I am considering actually rebuilding this and either keeping it, storing it, or selling it as a rebuild, because like I told you, I mean, just this in a long block form with a new set of bearings in there. I mean, if the cylinders all look all right and pistons look all right, and I can just roll some bearings in, like even at that state, this is probably at least a $3,000 bill. And they're hard to come by. Well, those crappy 6.2 Detroits had the issue of blowing out that center main webbing. These don't have an issue with that. People will spin bearings in them and then keep running them, and then you have so much slop in that crank eventually that, yeah, shit just blows apart. Well, wonder why. So that one I got turned out quite a ways, and luckily I have there's studs that come out of the back of the crank for the flywheel, and they're up against my holding fixture for the engine stand, so they actually won't allow the engine to rotate. So that's really working in my favor at the moment. However, that bottom one, I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do this. I might have to get a little tricky, because I don't know. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to access it from the bottom. So that's, what if I have a set of S wrenches here, some half moons? I'm going to find out, because I really don't want to take this thing off the stand. It was a chore in itself to get all this frickin' hanging mass mounted on this stand. So next time it comes off this stand, I prefer it, you know, be going in a crate and someone picking it up or whatever. Just, I want it to be built and done if we're gonna go to that stage. That bottom bolt though, it might be a fucking pain in the ass. But hey, 3 of them, that's something. And I got the 4 mounting this big old piece of cast iron. That's progress, right? So I talked about how they're forecasting snow this weekend in the video from yesterday or today, whenever that went up. Whenever this one goes up, I don't know. Previous video, I was doing electrical stuff on Detroit, talking shit about GM. In that video, I talked about how they're forecasting snow finally. I mean, it was January 4th the other day, and we still hadn't had any snow. I mean, it's not super common for it to snow in the valley in the wintertime here. We might have like 1 or 2 days where we have something that sticks for a couple hours, but we hadn't had anything, not even up in the mountains really. So woke up this morning and we actually had a little bit of snow. Kind of nice, and for whatever reason, you know, it's all melted off already and it's turned into rain. Yet it's pretty damn cold out here. So hopefully it's still blizzard up in the mountains. Hey, buddy. For anyone that hasn't met my dog, this is Boomer. He's after a shop cat that no longer lives in the shop. But he has to come out here every time I'm here just to see if she's out here. Simple things that make a dog happy. Oh, shit. Man. I don't know if that's going to work. Can I rotate this thing? If I... is there a way I could do this? Let me see if I got some wrenches. Some S wrenches or some half moons. Hell yeah. I lucked out. Happened to have a set of standard half moon wrenches on the service truck. So, we should be in business. I just have to. No, it's loose. That one wasn't as tight. Might take a couple of minutes to, you know, turn this stupid thing out, but it's gonna be easier than taking this thing back off the stand, so we'll go that route. It's weird, this one's a little bit different than how the coupler on my backhoe works. I don't know if this was an earlier engine maybe, but the coupler on my hoe actually has a greaser that's built into the coupler to pump it full of grease to prevent this from happening. Almost like it was a preventative thing they did in later years maybe. But I want to say the 310 crawlers were later model machines than my hoe is, but maybe I'm wrong. The guy I bought this from, he made it sound like, yeah, this thing, probably put some fresh fuel in it, she'll probably kick right off. You should have seen, when I pulled the injection pump off of this and tore into that pump, I almost didn't think I'd get the part that I needed because there was so much rust inside this pump. So tell me that, oh yeah, it's just been sitting a couple of months and yeah, she's a runner. Yeah, it might have been a runner like 20 years ago, but
whatever. I think it was the rotor. Somehow I messed up the rotor in my pump when I was taking it apart. I rebuilt the pump and my hoe twice or 3 times because of, no, I've done it twice because of water in the steel tank that I didn't, for whatever reason. I thought I had it all out, so unless I got water from rain or whatever, condensation buildup that got back in there, I mean, I kept the tank pretty full on a regular basis, so I can't imagine it was condensation, but it ended up rusting up that pump a second time. So this go around, when I took it out and rebuilt it, I think I had to hammer the rotor out, and that's what messed it up. But got it fixed. It's no longer running off of the steel tank. I actually have a boat tank that I put another quick connect marine nipple on to run the return. And I just have a removable 6-gallon tank, 5-gallon tank, whatever it is. I take it over there when I want to use the machine and hook it up, and she's good to go. She's got a little hand priming bulb on it. Like, what more does a guy need? And that machine, typically, I'm not running it long enough to need more than that 5 or 6 gallons of fuel at a time. I wonder if I can get my hand in here. It's got to be pretty loose at this point. Damn, not loose enough, huh? But I don't know that I'm gonna go put a box in on that much longer. See if I can get an opening in there, weasel it out. Problem is, these other bolts, I can't get them all the way out of the coupler. They're too long, unless, wonder now if that bottom one's loose. Maybe I can hammer on it and get that whole thing to come off a little bit. Let's give that a shot. The problem is, where is that? Oh, that's weird. Those aren't studs on the front. They ran a bolt through it and then nutted it on the back side. What the hell? Okay, so let's take those bolts out. And for all I know, the thing will just fall right off. It's tight fit when you got a bunch of grease on there. Dirt crap. You know, if there was any more bolts that I had to mess with on this, I'd fire the compressor up to take these out, but it's just easier to go this way at this point. So they're not threaded through that. So they did, just the bolts I think went the opposite direction. I'll have to watch the video back. See how it's starting to rotate? Yeah, that's gonna free it up. Good. I should be able to tap that out probably. Maybe it's something smaller than a sledgehammer though. Oh yeah. Hell yeah. Progress. I wonder what size these are. I noticed on this machine when I was disassembling it, because the frame and everything I cut up and scrapped. And a lot of the bolts I kept, and a lot of them are, I want to say these are probably 5/8 fine thread. Like, it's odd that they had so much fine thread bolt holding this thing together. Yeah, the coupler came right off the front of the crank. Okay. I'm cooking with gas. I can just get that lower one all the way out. But
you know, naturally now I have 20 pounds hanging off of there. That good friggin' luck. Damn, dude. Maybe that wasn't a good idea. No, but still, there's nowhere near enough to get those backed all the way out. Damn it. I'm gonna go ahead, put that upper bolt, just slide it in there, just to hang it, so I'm not having to try to hold this. Because it's not light. We'll do that. It did break that seal from the crank doing that. You would think, looking at this, that it was absolutely finger tight. But, oh, maybe? Damn, that's just this kind of shit the guy is constantly contending with. Like, crazy to think that even back in 1965, we still had dipshits for engineers. Like, you can still take something like this that shouldn't be super difficult and make it difficult. Granted, yeah, I know you can get the guys that are, ooh, why don't you just spin the engine over? Take it off the spin, take it off the spin and spin it. Well, like I said, this thing's definitely over 1,000 pounds and is quite the workout wrestling it onto a stand. So, if you want to take it off for me, by all fucking means, come do it. Otherwise, I'm going to keep inching this little bastard out one turn at a time. Eventually the thing will fall off. I got it moving at the moment, so. Oh, shit. It's off. All right. Cool. So now, take those bolts back out of the top. And this whole thing's going to try to fall on the floor and bust into 1,000 pieces. So, gotta not be a dumbass. Probably try to hold it. Oh, yeah. There we go. She's free. So, the press clearly is not going to work. This cast piece isn't going to fit between those press plates, so it hit me. Why not put a puller on there? And I can push against the shaft and pull that coupler instead of pressing the shaft out of the coupler and trying to hold the coupler. So we're going to give this a shot. And it is very rusty. Trying to hold this and tighten. Damn. There's just so much rust in it. I may get the torch out and heat this while I'm trying to pull on it. I got to figure out a way to, maybe a big screwdriver will fit through there. Got to figure out a way to hold that so I'm not trying to hold it.
because it's a chore in itself.
If I can do something like this, maybe. Oh yeah. There we go. Oh, there we don't go. It's pretty tight. All right, well, failed first attempt. Let's regroup and get the torch out. Just got to keep going after it. So, I flipped the jaws on that puller around, and I have it back on there with a little bit of pressure. I'm going to heat this up till it's pretty damn hot.
You'll work on engines and machinery and not think of your own personal safety? Here, shake hands with danger.
Hopefully, those flanges will pop off with just the pressure that's on there.
Safety. Now they call me. Three Finger Joe.
Or it'll break this Chinese puller again, which, whatever, it's already broken. I don't have any good pullers here at the house or even on the truck. They're all at work, so making do with what we got. And I've heated this up in the past when it was still on the engine, but clearly I couldn't get to the backside like this, so hopefully I'll be able to direct more of that heat where it needs to go. I'm going to try to get this really hot, and then I'm going to soak it with some liquid ranch. Hose it down, we'll just let it sit here with pressure on it. It'd probably be a little more efficient if I actually switched the torch for a rosebud, but that takes too much time. Heat it up with this, it'll work. Well, this coupler is not going to be salvageable, I don't think. It's got rubber for these mounting bolts that's melting out of it, but it's okay. As long as I can salvage this pump, just to have a spare pump, I'm good with that. I don't need the coupler. Well, yeah, it's pretty nasty. I'd say it's pretty warm. Get some penetrating oil. sure that smell great too. It's a good thing I moved this outside instead of doing it in the shop. You know, this shit in my shop, so. Yeah, let it cook right in. I mean, if I can't get it to break loose doing this, there's no hope for it. I mean, it suck. I'd really like to salvage it, but let it sit for a couple minutes. I'll get back with you. So I was letting it soak for a minute, picking stuff up. I heard a loud pop, went over and looked at it. It came loose. I'm gonna call that a win. As long as I can get the whole thing off of there, I suppose, but it's coming relatively easy now. Yep. Got him. Whew. Yeah, melted the rubber out of that. Coupler ain't no good, but otherwise, we got a salvageable pump at this point. Oh, I guess there's still 2 bolts that are retaining the pump. Might help pull those out. Oh, those are what, half 9/16. Naturally the size that it's not next to me, so. Careful. Those are, yeah. Oh shit, they're not very tight. I can't get them out with my fingers, but I put that socket on there and it goes, whatever. Or maybe it was just, no, they're both loose. I guess you fuck around enough and bolts just fall out, huh? All right. And that is how you pull a hydraulic pump off a machine that it probably hasn't been off since it was built. And, you know, tell by the crap that I didn't get pressure washed off how caked and shit it was. All that shit just over the years, it'll just weld that shaft right on there. So she's salvaged. I'll clean it up, put it on the shelf. We'll have an extra hydraulic pump that I'm gonna assume is good. It feels like it makes pressure, and it does, so I'm gonna assume that thing's good. If I need one in the future for mine or my backhoe, I got one sitting on the shelf. There you have it. Catch you guys on the next one.